Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Decoding the Unknown. As always, I'm your host Simon Worms here, one of my writers, in this case Katie. Thank you so much, Katie has written me an episode. HAARP, what's going on in Alaska? Isn't HAARP that big radar thing? If you're new here, welcome by the way. I read the script, Katie wrote it, I've not read it before. You and I, dear audience, we're going to explore it together. Let's jump in. Weather, am I right? What's going on with all this weather? We're having floods, wildfires, hurricanes, snow dumps, storms that suddenly get so bad they're called bomb cyclones. Oh my god, I've never even heard of that. I don't know, I live in the middle of Europe. We don't really get very much extreme weather. Sometimes it snows quite badly, but then the snowplows go out and plow the roads, and it's all rather nice. Sometimes it rains a lot, but it doesn't really flood. I don't know, I think about Florida and it's like, oh my god, Florida. It seems so nice, it's tropical. The Florida men are doing crazy things. And I don't know, I've been to Florida a few times and it's really nice weather. But then also sometimes it just gets completely ruined by a hurricane. I remember I was there in, it must have been around late 90s. And there was some massive storm, apparently one of those years. And this is one of the, those memories from early childhood. And my dad was like, come look at the paper. And I'm like, why? And I'm like, this is this storm that's hit Florida, and this is the neighborhood where we had our house near Disney for the week. And I was like, oh my god, it's been destroyed. I mean, not destroyed, but it was badly flooded or whatever. Just before we continue, quick shout out to today's fantastic sponsor, Gamer Supps. Gamer Supps make outrageously delicious energy drinks and non-energy drinks. If you're looking just to stay hydrated, this is the blue flavor. It's kind of like fruity. I don't know why they call it just blue. My favorite flavor is Dragon Fruit Punch, closely followed by Arctic Cooler, which is one I recently got, and I've been very much enjoying that. Look, I'm one of those people, I love energy drinks. I love caffeine. I drink too much coffee. I'm the first to admit it. Caffeine fuels my day, and Gamer Supps make sure that I get the caffeine that I need, and it is a need. It's not a want, it's a need, and they ensure that I stay caffeinated and hydrated throughout the day, which is super nice because I just drank lots of coffee and energy drinks, the famous one, and just never stayed hydrated enough. But now I'm staying hydrated, I'm peeing more often. You're welcome for that image. So look, get yourself some Gamer Supps. It's just absolutely the way to go. It's also super cheap when you consider, there's 50 servings in each of these things. This one's smaller because it doesn't contain caffeine. 50 servings in each of these, and it's delicious. I drink it pretty much constantly all day. Just drinking that stuff, keeping myself going. So, go to gamersups.gg/unknown. There's a link below and you'll get 10% off if you use the code unknown. It's just brilliant stuff. You'll love it. And now back to today's episode. Has it always been this bad? Can we put everything down to climate change? What if we don't believe that humans have trashed the planet so badly we're actually mucking up the natural meteorological cycle of the world? And what's the answer then? Well, obviously, it's something that's being done on purpose. Why? Oh, there are so many reasons, don't you worry. But obviously, none of them are good. And who's doing this exactly? Well, they are, of course. And who are they, you might be wondering? Well, nobody's really been able to pin them down. But we all know roughly who they are. The shadowy uber elites who secretly run the world, or who may or may not be lizards. There are definitely going to be some kind of secret weird meetings going on where everyone dresses in hooded robes and hopefully has some kind of cool symbolic jewelry, maybe a pendant, a necklace, or some sort of brooch. I'm definitely interested in the trappings of Illuminati merch. Isn't there one of Trump's people is a climate change denier guy? Is it RFK? I mean, he believes in that vaccines aren't all they're cracked up to be. He's Minister of Health. What? Isn't there, I feel like there's some climate change denier. It doesn't matter. We know, just ask any serious scientist, please. Anyway, cliched ideas of Kabbalistic, new word for me, meetings aside, any viewer of this channel is likely aware of this mysterious they, whether it be a section or a subsection or secret offshoot of a country's government, a mysterious independent agency, or a secret worldwide circle jerk of the quietly rich and powerful. You have to be extremely low-key to be in this elite group. I'm thinking that Elon Musk has not been invited, but I can definitely see Bill Gates flashing some sort of pendant from inside his hooded robe. Man, yeah, I get Elon Musk wouldn't get invited to this because then a year later, he'd be like, yeah, I was in an Illuminati. They made me sign all these NDAs, but I'm super rich, so what are they going to do? And also, bunch of fucking knobs. Elon Musk would just end up talking about it because he seems to change his mind on things really quickly. Man, I want to belong to a secret society. Yeah, I mean, you should. It's awesome. I mean, I mean, what would I know about secret societies? Actually, I just remembered that I was personally invited to join the Illuminati by someone called Christian Bendels via email in 2021. Oh my god, yeah. Now, I see you still get that. Like, I swear Illuminati still pops up in my, when you, for whatever reason, you've got an email and it's like, they're like, check your inbox, don't forget to check your spam. And you go in there and it's like, oh god, it is in the spam. And you open up spam and it's just like, buy Viagra, buy Illuminati or get Illuminati membership. The secret to having a huge cock. Like, I don't know, spam is a nightmare. I searched for that exact name just now and it returned 0 results. Mysterious indeed. In order to join, I had to email illuminatiinvitation66@gmail.com for more information. I didn't do this at the time, as it seemed a disappointing email address for a secret worldwide organization, but if you want to, go ahead. Again, illuminatiinvitation66@gmail.com. I wonder what happens if you do email that. Anyway, the point of all of this is to say that secret networks are still being blamed for pulling the strings behind all kinds of global activity, including the weather. Oh, HAARP's not the big radio thing. It's the weather control device or whatever. Like from Red Alert 2. Anyone else play that game? That was a dope game. Red Alert 2, where the Allies had the weather control device. And wait, so did the Soviets have the chronosphere? Or did the Allies also have the chronosphere? So, and then maybe the Soviets had the nuclear bomb. Oh, it doesn't matter. Why are we talking about Red Alert 2? I really like to play that again. I should work out how to play that. And they're not even doing it secretly. An ex-government project called the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, thankfully abbreviated to HAARP, has routinely been blamed for everything from creating and directing hurricanes to controlling people's minds. I mean, this is like another one of those things where it's like, yeah, okay, maybe I could get behind your one conspiracy theory, tell me about that. And then they're always like, yeah, and it's done by lizards. And you're like, oh, God, what do you think the odds are of both of those being true, especially the lizard thing? So, what is this HAARP thing, and should we be worried about it? Well, it's time to decode. What are we harping on about? This is like the Kozarev Mirrors episode for me, in that no matter how many times I read about something, I still have no idea what's going on. Oh, okay, don't worry about it, Katie, because no one has any idea what's going on with Kozarev Mirrors, because they're these mirrors that people, or some very few people, believe that they can use them to see the past or the future. It's obviously nonsense, and that's why you don't understand it. I still have no idea what's going on, but because I'm paid to write about this stuff, I attempt to make it seem like I know what I'm talking about. Me too. I spoke to my mum just now, and when she asked what I was working on, I told her it was a US governmental program that shoots radio waves into the ionosphere, and which people are now trying to claim was attempting to rig the recent US election. Oh my, this is true, and was said quite confidently, so I think she was impressed with my obviously high level of knowledge. While some of you, I'm sure, are intimately familiar with the inner workings of our beloved ionosphere. Oh, come on, the ionosphere is not real, Katie. Everyone knows that. It even sounds made up. It's like, someone's like, oh yeah, what? Atmosphere. Yeah, and the secret ionosphere project. Come on. I'm just joking, by the way, just in case it's not obvious. People in the comments being something like, ionosphere is a real thing. It's like, I know sometimes my Britishness, it's too high. The levels of sarcasm are just too high. I come from a country of sarcastic douchebags. Just kidding, UK, I love you. My fellow countrymen. I'm also sure that most of us are not, so for the benefit of us poor dummies, let's find out more about HAARP and what it says it's doing. While it was originally set up as a government scheme, it's currently being run by the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And here's what they say about it on their website, quoting, "The High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, HAARP, is the world's most capable, high-power, high-frequency HF transmitter for the study of the ionosphere." I mean, okay, thanks for that, but is there any more to it, such as what the principal instrument might be? Oh, well, they go on to say the principal instrument. I'm like, why is this? That seems like a very specific term, Katie. And then I realize it's because that's exactly what they describe it as. The principal instrument is the Ionospheric Research Instrument, or IRI, a phased array of 180 HF cross dipole antennas spread across 33 acres and capable of radiating 3.6 megawatts. Is gigawatt even a real thing? From Back to the Future. It's the upper atmosphere and ionosphere. Transmit frequencies are selectable in the range of 2.7 to 10 megahertz, and since the antennas form a sophisticated phased array, the transmitted beam can take many shapes, can be scanned over a wide angular range, and multiple beams can be formed. Oh my god, what are you talking? What does this mean? It's like, yeah, we're using radio waves to study the ionosphere. Cool, done. And the ionosphere is like got to be one of the layers, right? Boom, easy. Interesting. I admit they've really intrigued me here. And how about transmission shelters? How many of those bad boys do they have? Well, here's the answer. Quoting, the facility uses 30 transmission shelters. That was the first thing that came to my mind when I read that previous paragraph. I was like, yeah. But what about the transmission shelters? Each with 6 pairs of 10 kilowatt transmitters to achieve the 3.6 megawatt transmit power. Wow. Okay. Thank you so much, Alaska Fairbanks. That's all I needed to know. No further questions. Oh, I wish it was so simple. Unfortunately, non-science heads like me don't really understand this explanation, so let's break it down into more laymannic terms. In a remote spot in southeast Alaska, there's a large, almost square arrangement of 180 metal poles, 12 down, 15 across. These poles are antennas and are 72 feet or just under 22 meters tall. That's 15 Danny DeVitos, maybe with the top one wearing a tinfoil hat. Each antenna has 4 long arms extending out of it near the top, which are technically 2 crossed dipoles. These can be put into a variety of modes and are controlled individually. The overall effect looks like a load of creepy spy antennas in a very rigid formation in the middle of nowhere. If you happen to be driving past, which you most likely wouldn't be, it's like Alaska's massive and there's no one there. I'm sorry, I know people are listening from Alaska because that's statistically how it works. Like most of my audience are Americans. I know some people live in Alaska. Hello, Alaska! Comment below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening as the podcast, you can't do shit. I mean, maybe leave me a nice review after all the shit I've talked about you. Thank you, Alaska. Appreciate you. Love you.
That has to be one of the prettiest countries in the world. God was really having a good day when he made Alaska. Now then.
You might think it's some sort of high-tech, non-moving wind farm or a power station set up or something like that. But HAARP is all about the ionosphere, so let's find out more about that. The ionosphere is part of Earth's upper atmosphere. Nailed it. According to NASA, the ionosphere stretches roughly 50 to 400 miles above the Earth's surface, right at the edge of space. End quote. It's where all the charged particles in our atmosphere can be found, and it's in a constant state of change. It's also the area where most of our satellites can be found, meaning that GPS and radio signals travel through the ionosphere all the time. See, it's not so confusing now that we're explaining it all nicely. I mean, okay, so they've got this thing which they use to study the top layer of the atmosphere before space. Boom! Easy. So, you may recall that HAARP stands for High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. Of course I did. I immediately memorized that, Katie. So here's where the auroral part comes in. I'll admit that I'd been skimming over that word, just reading it as oral for some reason, and literally only just saw it was auroral, as in aurora, as in the Northern Lights type of phenomenon. Let's just pretend that we knew that the whole time. Yes, let's also just pretend that I definitely knew that the word lengthy was lengthy and not lengthly. And I didn't learn that it was actually lengthy instead of lengthly at 37 years of age. Let's pretend that never happened as well. We all make mistakes. I still say it as lengthly because I've just been doing it my whole goddamn life, even though I know it's wrong. It's like people who say, I could care less. It's like, bro, you couldn't care less. You couldn't care less. If you could care less, then it would, diminish your point, wouldn't it? Except mine was lengthy. The ionosphere is constantly aglow because of a combination of sunlight hitting atoms and molecules up there and ionized atoms hitting electrons. Basically, photons are being released all over the shop, and as these are light particles, the ionosphere is seriously lit. The preferred term for this is airglow, and scientists use it to study the behavior of gases in the ionosphere, for example, as they all let off different colors. Yeah, I just refer to it as lit. Dude, the atmosphere is lit, bro. Do people still use lit? Definitely not. Lit was not even in vogue when I was in school. HAARP has even been able to produce its own form of aurora, although it's extremely weak and unimpressive compared to what nature does on its own. Yeah, because nature's big. And only visible using sensitive cameras, not to the naked eye. But if they're mucking about in the sky with this sort of thing, well, what else are they getting up to? When HAARP was set up in 1990, it was a joint project between the US Air Force and the US Navy. According to the University of Alaska Fairbanks site again, quote, its goal was to research the physical and electrical properties of the Earth's ionosphere, which can affect our military and civilian communication and navigation systems. So that's where the shooting radio waves into the ionosphere part comes in. The antennas at HAARP send up radio waves to interact with the electrons and ions in the ionosphere. This creates what are called small perturbations, which sounds quite funny, and I think most of us would be a little bit perturbed if someone was just shooting stuff into our glowing areas as well. I don't have any glowing areas. Is there a part of me that's supposed to glow? These perturbations are just little temporary changes in areas of the ionosphere that scientists can examine, track, and measure. They could do this without blasting up radio waves, as perturbations do occur naturally, but this doesn't happen that often, and they wouldn't necessarily know where to look, so creating the anomalies themselves means that they can study the effects whenever they want. Yeah, it's nice. You get to bend nature to your schedule. As per HAARP's current website, with a facility like HAARP, it's possible to perform an experiment at will to create plasma structures and irregularities, use the ionosphere like an antenna to excite low-frequency rays, create weak luminescence, aurora-like glows, and a variety of other experiments. The program cost around $290 million to set up back in the 90s and seemed to be the pet project of Ted Stevens, the senator for Alaska at the time. That's a lot of money for I guess this was, I'm kind of like, oh, this is a university project. It's like, no. This is a military project. US Navy and Army. And you're like, that is a load of money for a university. And then you're like, oh yeah, but this is basically it's just a forgotten about line item for the military. 290 million. What is that? Like 1/10 of one of those super bombers. He died in 2010, and in 2014 they used HAARP to resurrect. How deep does the conspiracy go? I'm sorry. And in 2014, the US Air Force said it no longer had the desire of funding the project, so the whole thing was going to be decommissioned until it was eventually transferred to the University of Alaska Fairbanks in August 2015. So, that's the basics of HAARP, and in general it seems like something that people in Alaska can just get on with and shouldn't have any effect on the rest of us, right? Well, if you had forgotten, this is an episode of Decoding the Unknown, and we're just about to get to the weird stuff. Pulling on the HAARP strings. Add together a government program, weird metal antenna, nebulous-sounding mission statements, and a remote location, and you can see how this can equal shady stuff quite quickly. Let's go through the main things people have accused HAARP of being behind over the years. Mind control. As well as beaming radio waves up into space, HAARP have been targeted as beaming things into people's brains too. Think about things that beam into your brain. An MRI machine, an X-ray, that kind of thing. Very small device in a small room, very contained, because your brain is small. Shooting things into the ionosphere, absolutely off massive antenna thing in Alaska, because the ionosphere is really big. Look, I don't know anything about science, but just prima facie, it doesn't make sense. I suppose it makes sense. No! These are high-frequency transmitters, so if they're capable of sending waves hundreds of miles into the air, surely they must be able to affect our brains here, just a few meters below them. This theory was strongly promoted in the book Angels Don't Play This HAARP, which I suppose I should begrudgingly give pun points to, but it doesn't make that much sense overall. No. If you're calling your science book with a pun, it's like, really? Really? Although I suppose all the subtitles of this are kind of puns as well, so... Pot calling the kettle black, are we, Simon? Also, as I'm about to tell you, one of the authors is a bit of a loon. You don't say. So I don't want to give him any credit at all. These theories usually rotate around a book written by a self-important white male. And oh look, what do we have here? It's always some middle-aged to late middle-age, probably could be elderly, like white dude who's a little bit crazy, not getting enough attention, wants to talk about aliens and sell some books. That's who these people are. This was written by Gene Manning and Dr. Nick Begich, although apparently this was more of a stylized doctor, as according to a reporter Dermot Cole, he had a, quote, 1994 honorary doctorate from a diploma mill in Sri Lanka, the Open University for Complementary Medicines. Dude. You have an honorary doctorate from a diploma mill. If you're buying a diploma, why not just get a regular doctorate? They're both nonsense. There are a lot of Begiches in the family tree, and it doesn't help when this one, who was originally known as Nick Begich Jr., upgraded himself to Nick Begich Sr., although his son is still Nick Begich III. You see? It's pretty confusing stuff. Nick Begich III is also trying to run for Congress representing Alaska, and literally now, at the time of me typing this, he has just been confirmed as the winner. He seemed to be in with a good shout the whole time, though, which is probably why his dad's kooky publishing website, earthpulse.com was taken down at some point last year. He's like, Dad, I'm trying to run for like Congress. You can't be having earthpulse.com up. It's crazy, Dad. It's crazy. And he's like, all right, son, just because you're running for Congress, I'll take it down. I had to use the Wayback Machine to find it, but then I also found another link to the same old guff at shop.thehiddenmonks.com if you fancy a gander. What is going on? You see, Begich Senior, or Junior, or the second, or Doctor, the one who wrote the book anyway, is quite a well-known name in conspiracy circles and has featured regularly on such DTU frequent flyers as Coast to Coast with Art Bell and InfoWars, which has recently been bought by the satirical news site The Onion, much to the world's delight. It is delightful. I love how much money The Onion has. Apparently, The Onion were bought by like a venture capital firm or private equity or something like that, like, you know, finance bros who got loads of money and invest in different and so they must, because I think the price was several million. And I'm like, The Onion, no offense, The Onion, fucking love you, Onion, but I don't know, I don't come across your YouTube or articles like I used to. Like, 15 years ago, I swear, like, Onion was the pinnacle of YouTube content for me. And now it just looks really dated, although still hilarious. Like that one where it's that guy, the newscaster, he's talking to like, I don't know, like a criminologist or whatever. And he's got, or is it a woman? She's got all these really specific questions about, so if someone did need to dispose of a body, it's like, oh, she's definitely killed someone and has a body in her cellar. Onion. And I love the fact that you've got so much money now that you can just buy InfoWars just on a whim, apparently. Anyway, the theory that HAARP can alter brain chemistry or be used as a giant transmitter or whatever to read minds was touted in this book, which was published in 1995. HAARP had only just been built by 1994 and didn't really start on its project properly until 1999, so Begich and Manning were pretty on the ball here. I guess there's not much else going on in Alaska. Oh, that's not true. Oh, no, it is true. Maybe is there mining in Alaska? I feel like if someone said to me Alaska, I'd be like, snow? Mining, criminals, drinking. That, like, I don't know, the further north you get, it's just going to be cold and people are going to drink more. Love you, Alaska. Leave a review if you're sober enough to manage it. The book has very positive reviews on Amazon, but with things like this, you're either totally into it or you're just not into it at all. Yeah, like, I'm not going to be into this. So it's like, I'm never going to buy this book, so I'm never going to review it. People who buy this book are already bought in. And so they're going to be like, oh my God, truth to power, my dude. Tell it, Dr. whatever the fuck your name was. Tell it, Dr. Nick. Tell it. One 5-star reviewer, Peter A. Kirby, mentions Begich and Manning lay it all on the table. They write about HAARP's origins and history. They write about the HAARP facility's ability to generate earthquakes, modify the weather, control people's minds, map the Earth's interior, generate ultra-powerful laser-like beams, transmit wireless power, and raise that dude, the Senator Ted Stevens from the dead in 2014. No, that last bit's not part of the quote. It's just a stupid joke. The thing is, if this book was published in 1995, it was written just as HAARP was being constructed. Nobody would really know what it was going to be able to do. There would not have been any way to find evidence that anything had happened, as no such experiments would have been carried out yet. I didn't even bother reading the book as I feared it might really alter the chemistry of my brain, but from the timeline, I'm guessing most of it must be speculative and not based on any real evidence. And aren't I nice using the word speculative in place of made up bullshit? Yep, but we all know what everyone's thinking except the people who are giving that book reviews because they bought it, because they believe in it, because they're silly. While I didn't read the book, I did watch a show which is available under 2 titles, either Mind Control, HAARP and the Future of Technology, or Mind Control, HAARP Conspiracy. They are the same thing, and after a disclaimer at the start that views expressed within are not necessarily those of the film company, it's basically Begich monologuing for an hour. He's an extremely fluid talker, and he can reference articles by title, publication, and date seemingly off the top of his head. If you saw him presenting something in real life, you'd probably come away thinking there was real food for thought there. Until you got home and forgot all about it, that is. Or you just did a tiny bit of research and were like, oh, wait, that was made up? And all of these resources are nonsense? I watched the whole thing to get a handle on this HAARP mind control idea, but it's not actually covered in that much detail. I wonder why. Basically, Begich's idea is that HAARP can send extremely low frequency waves, or ELF waves, up into the ionosphere, where they will be amplified and beamed back down to cover a potentially large geographic or demographic area. These can mess with your brain as it recognizes the ELF signals and tries to mirror them. What? Look, I don't know anything about this, but this does seem like a bit of a stretch. Maybe it can be amplified in the atmosphere, but that also doesn't seem like... I mean, maybe that happens. I don't know. It seems like a bit of a stretch. Why would it be amplified? But maybe it's possible. But then also, why would your brain try and mirror these signals? It's not like I'm holding my phone and I'm in a chat with someone and the radio waves from the phone or whatever are going into my brain and my brain's sending out more radio waves. It's a brain. I mean, I guess it does have some sort of brain waves that come out or whatnot because they can measure them. But I mean, it doesn't, I don't feel like this is based in solid science, is what I'm saying. This could induce feelings of fear, dread, and anxiety in, for example, enemy combatants. If we take things into the future, these waves could be used to communicate directly into troops' brains. Yeah, we've got perfectly functional radios. HAARP was originally set up by the US military to look at ways to improve mainly military navigation and communication technology, so I suppose this tracks. I mean... yes, if you want to be really insane about it. As you can probably see, brain stuff doesn't really seem like a good use of military research money, as in the future, troops on the ground are likely to be replaced by drones or remote weapons anyway, and security around military communications technology will also have to be improved to a point where beaming commands directly into a person's brain is likely to become moot. You can have some sort of like decryption chip in someone's brain. What's going on? Begich then takes this further to say that certain agencies may use this to implant synthetic memories into people's heads. But I think we've drifted quite a long way from some antenna in a field in Alaska at this point. Radio waves and electromagnetic devices can be used to affect our brains both in positive and negative ways. Begich references the Radio Frequency Radiation Dosimetry Handbook as a handy way of tabling the exact, quote, radio frequency dosages necessary to override the function of various vital organs in the body, the heart, lungs, brain, etc. Well, yeah, he's talking about, like, radiation being, like, melting your organs. And it's like, well, yeah, obviously, it's radiation. It can really fuck you up in, like, high quantities. But we're not talking about high quantities here. And if we were... everyone would be getting melted. Everyone would be getting their organs melted all the time. This makes it sound like a how-to guide of frequencies necessary to kill people, but it's just a report which has several additions regarding the safety levels of radio frequency radiation due to the increase in devices that emit this type of radiation. There are lots of equations in it, and again, much of it is theoretical. I'm sure many people would have a great time flicking through it, but yours truly isn't one of them. No. But this feels like, while it is speculative, this seems like it could be like a real science book talking about like what radio frequency radiation does to people. And hopefully it came to the conclusion not much, right? Because there was that thing do you remember people saying, like, I swear this was like when mobile phones first came out in like the early 2000s. People were like, oh yeah, you don't want to use a mobile phone holding up to your head like this. It'll give you a brain tumor. You got to use it on speaker mode. And I'm like, no. I'm going to hold it up to my head. And if I get a brain tumor, I'm not going to be like it was my mobile phone. Because it's not. It's not how it works. You're welcome. Use your mobile phone at leisure. Everyone's using it at leisure, unless you're insane, because it's 2024. Or maybe 2025 by the time this episode comes out. We're heading into the early stages of December, and I know I'm quite ahead on recording. Begich then ramps up the potential dangers of HAARP by saying that every time they fire radio waves into the sky, they're basically punching into the ionosphere and ringing it like a bell. This is what can then potentially alter chemical reactions and emotional states in the brains of huge numbers of people on Earth's surface. He makes it seem like anything HAARP does has a huge effect on a large area of the upper atmosphere. Ringing something like a bell indicates a force that radiates outwards, causing ripples and vibrations much further afield. This is simply not true. Sure, we've only really got HAARP's word for it, but according to them, the research they do is just in very small areas of the ionosphere, and any ripples or perturbations are made temporarily, and they're extremely localized. There is no massive pulse wave occurring in the ionosphere from the radio waves they send up, and the ionosphere is, by nature, a constantly shifting place. All they're doing is creating a convenient temporary testing environment that would occur at some point anyway. Yeah, and I just get the feeling the amount of energy you'd need to do something beyond that is going to be extraordinary. Begich also makes the dubious claim that the Persian Gulf War was not won by a superior attacking force, but because the Iraqi soldiers' brains were affected by low-frequency signals that were piggybacking on the calls to prayer being broadcast over loudspeakers. Dude, what? This is such a specific example. What's that got to do with What's that got to do with the ionosphere? You're saying like, oh, it's so powerful. We just zap it into the atmosphere, into the ionosphere, and it rings like a bell and affects all these people. Yeah, but we also need those crappy loudspeakers that they attached for like call to prayer. You know, come on. Why else would trained soldiers just give up and run off? It wasn't because they were outclassed, outgunned, and outflanked. Oh no, it was because of the feeling of fear and anxiety being beamed directly into their brains, of course. I mean, yeah, they're having fear and anxiety beamed directly into their brains by the fact that they're facing an overwhelming force. I was a child when this conflict was going on, but I remember a joke round school at the time. What does Saddam Hussein have in his pants? Scud marks. It's quite good. Although he doesn't, because he didn't have any. Did he? Maybe. The website for Begich's self-publishing company, Earth Pulse Press, is no longer available, presumably because, as he has the same name as his son, any searches for the Congress hopeful would have pulled up a lot of strange stuff indeed. But hey, even though Begich III's campaign team has finally disavowed any views held on the Earth Pulse site, Begich III is named in the paperwork as the Vice President, Treasurer, and Director for Earth Pulse. He might also be the Secretary, but the 3 is written in Roman numerals, and one of them looks a bit scribbled out, so I'm not sure about that. Anyway, he holds 16.66% of the shares, 666 of them. Surely that's relevant. Wait, is this all like public information? He owns 666 shares? Why? Why does this matter? Surely that's relevant. And in financial disclosures they had to make, according to an article from the Alaska Landmine, yes, their tagline is Explosive Alaska News, Begich III claimed between $100,000 and $1 million of income from Earth Pulse in 2022 to date, and $15,000 to $50,000 of income from Earth Pulse the prior year. So he must have released a book or something. That's quite a broad thing, though. 100,000 to $1 million. I guess it must have been like a tick box. You know when you go to certain countries and they have on their visa form, like, how much money do you have? How much money do you make? It's like, what? Why? There is quite a wide variance between these numbers, but maybe that's just the ranges in the boxes that you have to tick. Also, Earth Pulse is given the classification of vending machine operators as opposed to a publishing company, so who knows what's going on? What is going on? What are you talking? What is that? What? Suffice it to say, while Begich III might not want his dad's views attached to his run for Congress, he sure doesn't seem to mind profiting from the sales of books and DVDs relating to mind control and other conspiracy-related stuff. I found the link to the Alaska Landmine article on a site from Reddit called Nick Begich's a Weird, which pretty much sums them up. I've also wondered about things that are supposed to read large numbers of people's minds, like, is it like Cerebro in X-Men? Is there someone honing down until they find the one person they're looking for amid a sea of people's thoughts? Oh, that would be insane. Don't we just see a sea of thoughts? And what do people think when they're thinking of stuff? If I'm watching TV or whatever, I don't believe I'm actively thinking anything. I'm just watching the screen like a smooth-brained fool and probably playing a match 3 game on my phone. Don't judge me. You're doing something similar that no one knows about until an advert pops up and you forget the volume's on and everyone's going, what's that? Anyway, anyone looking at my brain will see a whole heap of nothing apart from maybe some shapes being swapped around. I'm pretty sure most people don't go around actively narrating state secrets in their head, and then there are those who apparently can't picture things in their minds at all. Those people, I just realized, those people who can't like have visual images, like they can't imagine like this coaster, like if I close my eyes, it's like, yeah, I'm imagining that coaster spinning round, like as if it's a 3D model in my brain. Some people can't do that. Those people are going to become the like secret holders or best spies, because anytime a regular spy gets captured, they'll be like, all right, John, get in the mind control device. We're having a look inside. And John will be like, all right. And just scan it and there's nothing. Maybe these poor sods will end up becoming the savior of mankind. I can just imagine the movie version of the villain stretching out their hand to pull the thoughts from some average Joe. Oh my god, Katie and I had exactly the same thoughts. Then stopping in confusion as their intended victim said, joke's on you, big brain, I've got no inner monologue. As for HAARP itself, there's a question on its FAQ page asking, can HAARP exert mind control over people? The succinct answer is no. Neuroscience is a complex field of study carried out by medical professionals, not scientists and researchers at HAARP. Well, we could probably leave it there. Aliens. Oh gosh, we have to do this again. Well, as we're talking about transmitters beaming up to the heavens, I suppose our little green friends have to make an appearance somewhere. There isn't actually much of a consensus about what HAARP's up to when it comes to all things extraterrestrial. There are those who think the transmitters are communicating with aliens, although, as you might expect, evidence for this is pretty thin on the ground. Yeah, I mean, if there was overwhelming evidence that HAARP was communicating with aliens, that would be a bigger news story. People wouldn't be like, oh, let's look for alien life. They'd be like, no, dude, we found it. The HAARP thing. Did you just forget about the aliens? Maybe HAARP transmitters are actually weapons used in some sort of Space Invaders style way to shoot down UFOs, although again, who knows where the remains of these craft end up. I saw an old post on an internet forum with one person saying that HAARP was tracking UFOs that were on course to arrive to Earth at the end of December 2012, just when the Mayan calendar was ending. Remember that? Wonder how that panned out. Not brilliantly, because again, we'd be like, oh, you don't remember the aliens coming in 2012? Why'd you just forget about the aliens? According to Rational Wiki, a site that sounds like I would love, some claim HAARP can create atmospheric vortexes, where flying saucers may frolic in the skies above stunned UFO experts. These claims are always impressive until you realise that nobody has ever managed to film or photograph a single convincing shred of evidence. Believe me, if my neighbours are capable of covertly filming people who neglect to pick up their dog poop from 50 paces away, there's no way that I'd miss something as large as flying saucers frolicking about in front of an intergalactic wormhole. I like those people. I was walking, I just got in my car the other day, just like stepped onto the pavement. It's like, brilliant. And stunk like shit. Of course it did. And I'm like, why? You're in a city. Even if you're not in a city, even if you're in the forest, pick up your dog poo. What the f***? You're making every... how can you be so selfish? My nice shoes are ruined. They were Vessies. Of course they're Vessies. I only wear Vessies. So I rinsed them off in the shower. But still, not fun. HAARP has actually leaned into this aspect of the conspiracy theory surrounding them, as they have a merchandise page where everything on it is branded with a picture of a transmitter in front of a swirly vortex and Area 49 underneath. If you can't beat them, you might as well join them and make some irony bucks along the way. Yes, nothing like some irony bucks. The aliens theory of this episode is even more far-fetched than the mind control bit, so let's move on to more substantial things. Chemtrails. I was tempted just to put see Chemtrails episode of Decoding the Unknown. Yeah, we did an episode about chemtrails, and people are crazy. They're like, oh yeah, they're filling up the planes. What do you think those are behind the planes? And it's like, oh, it's just clouds. The plane's making clouds. There's like condensation or some shit like that. And people in the comments being like, oh, Simon doesn't even know. It's like, no. Can't remember exactly what the f***'s happening, but I do know that I made a full episode about it, and then after understanding it, I was like, oh, okay, I get it. Exactly what I thought. People are talking nonsense. But I suppose we do need a bit of an explanation in case you missed that one. One thing about chemtrails is that if you believe in chemtrails, you really believe in them, and nothing we're going to say will change your mind, so feel free to jump ahead to the next chapter. Now that those kooks are out of the way, what are you even doing on this channel? If you believe in chemtrails, you come across the wrong channel, unless you just hate listen to this. In which case, that's fine. I'm still getting paid. Here's the basics. So, chemtrails, i.e. trails of chemicals sprayed out of planes to land all over the population or environment below for nefarious purposes, are not real. What you see in the sky behind planes are contrails, or trails of condensation or water vapor. Okay, I nailed it. Said it was condensation and clouds. Perfect. No, they do not last longer than when you were a kid. If they look like they do, it's because there are many more planes in the sky, and trails are affected by atmospheric conditions such as air humidity, so some do hang around longer depending on the conditions and height of the trails. Also, you're probably paying a lot more attention to this kind of thing now, whereas in the past, you had more important stuff to be getting on with. Really? I feel like now I've got more important stuff to be getting on with. In the past, I'd be like, oh, it's a nice field. I'm just going to go have a lie down in that field in the sun and look at the sky, which is so nice. And I just never would do that today because it's like, oh my God, I just go from work to family to like task to do, which is fine. I like it. Like, I like doing it. But it is I definitely would have noticed more planes in the sky when I was a boy. Because so-called chemtrails are a staple in the conspiracy world, HAARP is going to be linked to them at some point, because of course they are. But again, this is totally nothing to do with anything. If you recall, you should, unless your brain has been manipulated in the last few minutes, HAARP is all about sending radio waves into the ionosphere to heat up small parts of it for study. Yeah, and unless I'm really mistaken, didn't we talk about it being like right up there on the edge of space? You know where planes don't fly? The edge of space, do they? They're not that high. They're really low down when you think about it. This has nothing to do with planes, water trails, chemicals, or anything of that sort. In a slight coincidence, remember that Amazon review quote I picked more or less at random about Nick Begich Jr. Sr.'s book? It was by Peter A. Kirby, and here he is popping up again. Small conspiracy world, isn't it? He wrote a book called Chemtrails Exposed, a New Manhattan Project. Do you think that they go and review each other's books? Do you think there's some like Discord community of like underground conspiracy authors? And they're like, dude, I wrote this book about chemtrails. Will you go review it? And the guy's like, yeah, dude, I did the HAARP thing. I don't believe in chemtrails. I think that's a different conspiracy. Although all of these conspiracy theorists believe in all of the conspiracy theories for some stupid reason. Like, I'm like, JFK was weird. That assassination was weird. There's stuff going on there that I don't think we know about. I don't know what that is, but I'm open. Like, that was the one episode of Decoding the Unknown where I've been like, something weird is going on here, and I don't know what it is. But that doesn't mean that I go and subscribe to all of the other crazy theories. But I think they have like a review circle where they're all like reviewing each other's books tit for tat. So he wrote this book in 2016, and in 2012 he wrote an article called Smoking Gun, The HAARP and Chemtrails Connection, which was published on activistpost.com. In this article, he says that HAARP can be used to move particles around the sky, which will then modify the weather. Quote, chemtrails may enhance this connection between the lower and upper atmosphere. Then, when HAARP manipulates the ionosphere, the lower areas of the atmosphere where our weather happens can be manipulated accordingly. He goes on to say, if HAARP is powering the chemtrail airplanes, this would be a great logistical advantage, as the planes would not need to be grounded for fueling. What are you talking about? If HAARP is powering the chemtrail airplanes, how? What do you mean? What does that even possibly mean? How could you write that down and think it's a serious thing to write down without further explanation? Apparently HAARP can do it all. There have also been mobile mini HAARPs which can be located all over the place, and Kirby even posts a picture of a so-called mobile HAARP ship and says it has been speculated that this HAARP ship was used to trigger the March 2011 magnitude 9 Japan earthquake. These are dangerous claims, big man. I'm looking at the photo. I've got a little printout of the photo here. And it just looks like an oil rig or something with a, like, I don't know, it just looks like some, I mean, not an oil rig, but like, you know, a platform at sea. And you'd just be like, it's a radar, it's a fucking radar thing or whatever. I checked the photo that he posted, and it appears to be something belonging to the US, of course, called the SBX, a high-tech, sea-based X-band radar. Oh, what a surprise, it was a radar, because it looks like a radar, which was initially built to detect and analyze any missiles coming from North Korea. If you didn't notice or can't see the picture, yes, because you could be listening as a podcast, it looks like a radar. It looks like, you know, the big dome wet radar thing that you see, not the spinning one that you see at an airport, but the sort you see on like yachts, but just massive and on a platform. It also looks like the complete opposite of the HAARP dipole array. Those were tall antennas with 4 arms, and this looks like a giant golf ball. Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. I suppose the antennas could be inside, but I don't know how much affecting of the atmosphere this one lone boat chugging around in the Pacific is going to do. Wait, this is a boat? The picture's really tiny. If you can't see it, it's probably the size of 4 postage stamps stuck together, because my printer decided that it's best to have it really tiny for some reason. That's a boat? I wish I could see the picture better. It doesn't look like a boat. He ends by saying, we know HAARP can modify the weather. If one could, don't you think they would? I mean, sure, yeah, I completely agree. If you could control the weather, people definitely would. But you know what people can't do? Control the weather, and you've provided no evidence for that being a thing. Weather control is a godlike power. Chemtrails may be sprayed to enhance the effectiveness of these operations. If this is the case, our government's pattern of lying and obfuscation about HAARP makes perfect sense and is consistent with behavior exhibited by others associated with every aspect of chemtrails, geoengineering, and the related activities I outline. I mean, yes, very importantly though, you've included if this is the case in your quote there, which it most certainly is not. Okay, Kirby, riddle me this. If one could, don't you think they would? And they haven't, really. Have they? Unless they can't control the machine, which is, why there's all this shit weather everywhere all the time. Yeah, you just be like, who's behind it? Be like, okay, it's the US military. Okay. So they're not protecting Florida from hurricanes because they're dicks? Like, what would be the point of this? Also, they've got enemies. Why not just flood the out of North Korea? Just be like, yo, North Korea, it's going to rain forever. Your nuclear silos are going to be so flooded. Your nuclear physicists' notebooks, and I mean the paper ones because it's North Korea, are going to be ruined. There's going to be no luck for you in the weather anymore, North Korea, because we control it. Although that's easy for me to say. I live in Southern California, where I guess the brains behind HAARP also live because it's pretty nice here most of the time. Yeah, that's what they're doing. They're just making the weather in California great. Because before HAARP, the weather in California was notoriously apart from recently when there was a wildfire and my neighborhood was on the edge of an evacuation zone. Why didn't you order some rain then, HAARP? Why? Here's HAARP's response to whether it creates chemtrails. HAARP, you don't have to respond to every crazy conspiracy theory about you. Like, there are conspiracy theories about me, I just don't address them. One of my favorite ones is people think I'm in a wheelchair because I'm always sitting down, because I used to stand up and people are like, well, now you sit down. Were you in some kind of accident? It's like, no, I can stand. But like I'm saying, I don't need to disprove the crazy conspiracy theories. Anyway, HAARP says HAARP doesn't produce water in the atmosphere, has no capacity to release gases or liquids, and does not interact with existing water in clouds. Case fucking closed. That bit I added. That wasn't in the quote. That would be weird if HAARP, they're a university. They're a part project at a university. They wouldn't be like, case fucking closed, bitches. That would be weird. Weather manipulation. We've already blundered across this line thanks to our friend Peter A. Kirby, so let's expand on this theory. The main accusation leveled at HAARP is that it can manipulate, direct, and even manufacture adverse and destructive weather conditions for whatever reason people see fit. This has even come up recently with the 2024 US general election, when an uncharacteristically strong snowstorm dubbed 3 times the normal amount of snow Iowa sees in January during the presidential caucus, people got suspicious. Well, let's be honest, Trumpers got suspicious. I don't think the Democrats were particularly bothered one way or the other. Laura Loomer, a far-right conspiracy theorist and Trump simp, that's a nice way of putting it, wrote on X, is the deep state activating HAARP to disrupt the Iowa caucus. Wait, who the f*** are you? A far-right conspiracy theorist. Okay, good. For a moment, I thought you actually had a serious job. Oh, we all know Nikki Haley has a lot of friends in the defense industry and military-industrial complex. She is losing in Iowa, and now Iowa is set to get hit with a once-in-a-decade blizzard as Donald Trump is set to dominate the Iowa caucus. Is the deep state using HAARP to rig the Iowa caucus? Looks like weather manipulation to me. Oh my God. Do people actually pay attention to you? Like, I don't know who you are, and I feel like it'd just be best if everyone didn't know who you are, so we don't have to follow this nonsense. But do people look at you for facts? And because that's really concerning. Well, I guess she's the expert. MTG also jumped on the HAARP bandwagon. Who the fuck's MTG? Magic the Gathering? And no, don't get your budgie smugglers in a twist, Kevin. If you're listening, we're not talking about your funny little card game, Magic the Gathering. We're talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene. Oh, I've heard of her. Isn't she a bit loony? Can you say loony? Is that offensive? I don't know. Let me know in the comments. I'll do better. So, far-right conspiracy theorist and Trump simp. Are we seeing a pattern here? Who also happens to be a congresswoman. Ah, that's why she's crazy and a congresswoman, allegedly. I mean, she's a congresswoman. She's allegedly crazy, in my opinion. Honestly, I don't know much about her, but every time she comes up, it's always in relation to something crazy. On October 3rd, 2024, in the run-up to the presidential election, Green tweeted a picture of a map of the southeastern United States, basically showing that a hurricane was going to hit a lot of states that were likely to be voting Republican. How could that be a coincidence? Isn't the South generally more Republican? And also, just because they're closer to the Gulf of Mexico, there's gonna be more bad weather, guys. It's just how geography works. It's what they want you to believe. Which storm she was referring to specifically is unclear. Hurricane... I understand that it's not said Helen, that it's actually Helene. I heard that the other day. I was like, wait, that big hurricane was called Hurricane Helene? This is the problem. I don't watch the news. I entirely read the news. Like, I don't know why, I've just never been a news-watching dude, and so I just always read it, and so I don't know, I'm always like, Hurricane Helen, people are like, it's Helene, what, are you stupid? It's like, well, obviously I know a lot about it, I've read about it and all of this stuff, but it's just, I've never heard anyone say it. And Milton hadn't hit yet, that's an easy one to pronounce, and when it did, only Florida was affected in the US. Is Florida red or blue? I don't actually know. I get the feeling it's red, right? It's Florida. The map itself isn't very easy to understand, and Green's caption was, "This is a map of hurricane-affected areas with an overlay of electoral map by political party. Shows how hurricane devastation could affect the election." The top reply says things like, "So hurricane season is just a conspiracy during an election year, and this is stupid. I'm in Charlotte, NC. You're showing a map like it affected our voting process. It didn't." Basically, Green was suggesting that natural disasters were making it look bad for Republicans as it was going to affect areas where they were most likely to vote in big numbers. This was only a slight nod to conspiracy theory. It could also have been seen as just someone putting it down to sod's law, but then she upped the stakes by tweeting later that same day, "Yes, they can control the weather. It's ridiculous for anyone to lie and say it can't be done." I mean, there is some degree of weather control, right? The silver iodide seeding clouds and stuff over the desert or whatnot to make it rain. That's a thing, right? But I think it's less effective than people initially thought, right? I think I did something recently about that. But yeah, they can control the weather, sure, but not like you're talking about here. Again, with the they presumably being the Democrats. Well, just look how that turned out. Either they were shit at controlling the weather, or they turned out to be Republicans, which makes MTG a part of them. And she just outed all of them. Whoops-a-daisy. Now, while you may have some nagging thoughts about weather experimentation and modification in your mind, it is sort of true. Localized cloud seeding happens, which is where planes or generators on the ground release stuff into clouds to try and increase the precipitation that they produce. This is either because more precipitation is wanted, or to try and make clouds shed their loads early before a planned event. For example, Beijing tried doing this before the Olympic Games opening and closing ceremonies. This has been going on for decades, but the science community is on the fence about whether it's actually effective or not. There we go. That's basically just what I said, isn't it? God, such an extraordinarily large brain. Cloud seeding would not be able to produce tropical storms or snowstorms like the one in Iowa, but apparently a giant radio transmitter could. As neither a physicist nor a meteorologist, I'm not really sure how this would work. HAARP heats up electrons in the ionosphere, potentially hundreds of miles above our heads or above anyone who happens to be in Alaska. How does this translate to a snow dump 3,000 miles away or a tropical storm that originated nearly 5,000 miles southeast of the facility, which is really far? It doesn't. It's nonsense. As it turns out, the ionosphere as a whole cannot affect the weather on Earth, but the weather on Earth can affect the ionosphere, so maybe we should be thinking about that instead. We haven't reached a stage where we can control or create things like tornadoes or tropical storms. These are huge forces of nature, and while we are probably responsible for creating conditions that make them more likely to happen, humans in general, and they in particular, cannot do this. At least at the moment. Yeah, of course this could potentially be possible in the future. I mean, I feel like it's quite far out of our grasp right now, but, I mean, like, given a long enough time frame, we're going to do all sorts of cool shit as a species. Not me specifically. Not you and me, dear listener. Probably not you. Definitely not me. Most non-military weather manipulation experiments have been to try and stop things like tornadoes from forming or attempting to find ways to disperse them, not redirect them or make them stronger. Unfortunately, not much progress has been made here either, leading to the conclusion that humans are not yet at the level of godlike power Kirby was talking about when it came to controlling the weather. Oh my god, I saw that movie. I saw Twister when I was a boy, and I think it was one of the first... It might even have been a VHS. I think I had the VHS of Twister. It had this weird box. It had like a cardboard box, and the Twister on the front was like shiny, but the rest of it was matte. I don't know why I remember this box so much. And I was like, oh, there's a new Twisters movie. And I look it up on Rotten Tomatoes, and me and my wife were looking for a movie to watch. It gets like 80-something%. I'm like, it's going to be good. Oh my God. It's fucking terrible. Who thought this was a good movie? I'd look at the critics, and it's one of those weird Rotten Tomato ones where everyone's kind of like, it's okay. And because Rotten Tomatoes works by like, negative and positive reviews, it's okay counts as positive. And most of the reviewers are like, it's okay. It's not bad. So they gave it, it seems to have a really high Rotten Tomato score. Also, somehow the audience like it. It is so cheap. I'm not sure if they were trying to go for that like kind of 90s disaster movie vibe or whatever. But for me, it just wasn't working. And it just felt badly written, badly acted, badly directed, just across the board shit. It just wasn't good. I gave up after about 25 minutes. I was like, this is crazily bad. So don't see twisters. As for military weather manipulation, I guess this is a bit shadier. In 1978, lots of countries, including the US and the Soviet Union, signed the Convention on the Prohibition of Military or any other hostile use of environmental modification techniques. Oh, well, perfect! Then we know, look, if they signed a treaty in 1978, then we absolutely know that the government all of the governments that signed it have stood by the letter of that treaty and never pursued anything like this. Look, I'm not... obvious sarcasm is obvious, but I'm not one of those people who's like, oh yeah, just believe everything the government says. I think the government lie to us all the fucking time, but they can't control the weather like this. And they usually lie to us probably for our own good because we're all stupid. This includes agreeing to things like each state party to this convention undertakes not to engage in military or any other hostile use of environmental modification techniques having widespread, long-lasting or severe effects as the means of destruction, damage or injury to any other state party. Dude. I'm glad I'm not in politics because you'd have to just be reading that sort of shit all day and my mind would glaze over. I'd read a page of some political brief that I'm given and I'd be like, oh my God, okay. I've read it 6 times and I still haven't actually read it. You know, when you get to the bottom of a page, when you're feeling tired and reading a book and you're like, oh, I didn't read that. My mind was thinking about pretzels or something, you know? Yes, that sounds great, but we know that a lot of the time, these things aren't worth the paper they're written on, as cited by the Chemtrails episode, when referring to the military and weather manipulation experiments. Deborah Gordon, director of the Energy and Climate Program at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, is quoted as saying, "There's a lack of transparency in the research. We don't even know what people are working on. You can't govern something you can't see, and that's for peaceful applications." Yeah, look, the military's allowed to do this. They're the military. It's very beneficial for them to have secrets about what they can and can't do. Because if an enemy believes they can do something they can't, great. And if an enemy believes something they can't do something that they can, also great. Military secrecy, pretty good thing for militaries. And that's fine with me. They're allowed their black budgets. Because my opinion matters. But what does HAARP have to say about itself when asked if it's capable of manipulating the weather? Quote, "No. Radio waves in the frequency ranges that HAARP transmits are not absorbed in either the troposphere or the stratosphere, the 2 levels of atmosphere that produce Earth's weather. Since there is no interaction, there is no way to control the weather. The HAARP system is basically a large radio transmitter. Radio waves interact with electrical charges and currents and do not significantly interact with the troposphere." Oh yeah, but you used the word current there, and they mean it in not like the weather currents sort of way, but people in the conspiracy are like, see, I told you, they're controlling the weather currents. Further, if the ionospheric storms caused by the sun itself don't affect the surface weather, there is no chance that HAARP can either. Yeah, because the sun's really powerful. You see, nothing to worry about. HAARP is just one of those things that was doomed to attach to conspiracy theories from the start. It was originally funded by the US military. It was built in a remote area of a sparsely populated state. It is a weird-looking setup of strange metal antennae and a mission statement that contains words most people have never heard before. Even now, it's difficult to wrap your head around what they're actually doing and why they're still bothering. So it continues to be blamed for bad weather events. Yeah, I've entirely forgotten what they're supposed to be doing. They're studying the ionosphere. But for what again? I don't remember. It might be a strangely American thing to do. As per the HAARP page on Rational Wiki, quote, "HAARP is not even unique. There are several other similar radar stations, such as Kyra in Finland, LOFAR in the Netherlands, the SCAT network with 4 facilities in Sweden, Norway, Finland, and the Super Dawn network, which consists of 35 radars all around the world. Yet nobody seems to give a fuck about them." Ooh, I like the fact that Rational Wiki drops the F-bomb. I like this website even more now. Maybe that's because not many other countries have politicians belching out such far-flung theories on social media platforms, although that's not strictly true here. Hugo Chavez blamed the US for manufacturing the Haiti earthquake. I remember that, of 2010. And this was reported in Venezuelan media as being linked to HAARP. For the record, the earthquake was caused by the usual method of tectonic things slipping around under the surface of the Earth. Yeah, Katie, if you believe them to be real. Dr. Senior Junior Nick Begich also talked about weather manipulation in his show, mentioning how HAARP can apparently move jet streams around and manipulate gravitational waves, which can both then affect weather systems. He also brings up things called electrojets, which are streams of electric currents in the atmosphere. There's one called the equatorial electrojet, which is found above the magnetic equator, and there are 2 auroral electrojets found at the higher latitudes around each polar cap. Dear listener, you don't have to worry about this, because it's nonsense. Like, you could just glaze over this bit of the episode like I just did reading it. While Begich et al. Might have you believe that HAARP is in some way harnessing these electrojets to do their evil bidding, this isn't what is happening at all, and I don't think that's even possible. Under a subheading called Why HAARP is Actually Cool on the Rational Wiki site, it explains that HAARP basically uses the ionosphere and the aurora electrojets as... Oh wait, electrojets are actually real? It sounds like something so made up. I mean, what they're saying about them and how they use the electrojets to do the weather control and earthquakes or whatever they're talking about, that's not real, even if electrojets are real. Just because it's the Harry Potter example, right? King's Cross Station absolutely exists. Platform 9 exists. That doesn't mean that Platform 9 3/4 exists. Disappointingly, I know, we'd all like to go off to Hogwarts. It explains the HAARP basically uses the ionosphere and the aurora electrojets as a virtual, extremely low-frequency antenna, which can then make it easier to communicate with aliens. No, submarines, of course, is a military project, as ELF signals travel easily through water. These signals would still need specific equipment to be picked up, however, as they would be so weak, and therefore the risk to human health would be nil, as there wouldn't be any humans floating up in the area of the ionosphere that HAARP would be heating. At least, I'm not alone in finding all of this a bit over my GCSE physics level of understanding. There's a section on HAARP's FAQ page that says, this is all very confusing. And the answer starts, we know, space physics isn't an easy field of study. So that makes me feel a little bit better. It's like, yeah, space physics is hard, bro. No wonder you don't understand it. You're too dim. Not you, Katie. I'm just saying whoever was that person browsing it. You and me, Katie, we understand this fully. Giant brains together. My son just asked me what I was doing, and I said it was about a radio wave station that some people thought read people's minds and controlled the weather. His response, seems a bit fake. He's 9. If I ask my daughter, who is 4, about this, she'll be like, that's not real. She says this, like, if you tell her a joke or you make something up, she'll be like, that's not real. And she'd say, I'll ask her tonight. And that's exactly how she will reply. Or she'll say, are you just joking? And I'll be like, yes. So, what can we conclude? If you think that the University of Alaska Fairbanks really is up to some shady shit on behalf of the US government, I doubt any of this will have changed your minds. If you didn't know much about it, I hope you found it entertaining and not too confusing. As for me, I don't think we need electrojets beaming extremely low frequency signals into our brains to induce feelings of fear and anxiety. There's more than enough of that stuff going on in our day-to-day life already. To counteract it, I recommend copious amounts of Factboy, maybe in podcast form, if you're wandering around in the sun. Just don't worry about those trails in the sky. Wandering about in the sun. Katie, don't make me feel bad. It's the end of November. It's just misery outside. Oh, you live in Southern California though, don't you? So it's nice. Oh God, why don't I live in Southern California? What the No, I like the winter. That's it. That's the end of today's episode. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Katie, for writing it. Leave a review on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, and I'll see you, or I suppose you'll actually hear me, or see me in the next one. I won't see you, so that's not how it works. Right? Thanks for watching.